Our president is worried about the expansion of the medical assistance in dying programs of Canada because it's being linked now to organ harvesting for American buyers. That right there means there is an incentive to convince people with mild or even low mental illness, for example, to suicide themselves for the sole purpose of dividing up and selling their organs. This is an industry that our president does not control. It's actually something that is readily expanding in the United States. People don't realize this. The black market for organ harvesting was heavily supported by illegal immigration. Kids that would be kidnapped in Central and South America would be trafficked to the United States across the border. When this was discovered by the FBI, the president said, we are going to now start doing DNA testing on children because people that were bringing them across the border, those would not be their biological parents. These kids would come to the United States. They would be sold for sex or for their organs. This is all information according to our Federal Bureau of Investigations. Now that our border is closed, we're seeing a rise in the push for medical assistance in dying to our northern neighbors. And those organs are being harvested to the U.S. In a way, it's to supplement what they're not getting from across the border to the South. This is creating a huge problem, and even the president is addressing it. So that's why I wanted to speak about it today and bring some insight in. I noticed that Glenn Beck talked about it, so we're going to listen to him for a second.
It's getting really bad up in Canada. I was with some Canadians yesterday. I saw them. I was out in front of the Capitol yesterday after meeting with Senator Lee, and I come out and these people say, "That's Glenn Beck." And I turn around and they're like, "Oh my gosh." And they come up to me and they're Canadians. I'm like, can you still cross the border from Canada? I didn't even know that was legal still, but
they love this humor, but
they love this humor, but they were great and they're big fans. And, I asked them about, how things were going in Canada. They're like, really not good. And I said, I'm really concerned about your MAiD program. They were like, yeah, you think so? Canada is in a euthanasia crisis. The cheapening of life. This started out about 10 years ago in Canada. If you have a chronic illness and you are close to death, you're going to die anyway. And I don't mean like from old age. I mean, you are close to death and you're in massive pain. You can end life. Now, if you remember right, Stu and I talked about this in the days of Fox. One of the problems we had was the complete live system with Obamacare. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you have a government healthcare system, all it takes is a shortage of any kind, and then you start devaluing life on both ends of the spectrum. Up until 12, Zeke Emanuel's is up until 12 years old, you get very little Medicare or medicine and care, and over 50, they begin to cut your care. They keep.
What's really important about this topic is that a lot of people here in the U.S., we don't know that medical assistance in dying is a real thing. Here in America, depending on how old you are, you're going to remember the name Dr. Kevorkian. I did a video about him. They called him the Angel of Death. And he passed away, 13 years ago. He went to prison because he used to do assistance in dying. Now that the globalists are doing their takeover of these different countries, Justin Trudeau literally gave the Canadian government to the World Economic Forum. Their famously, Klaus Schwab said their cabinets were penetrated. What this means is that the globalist agenda, when it comes to euthanizing and getting rid of the native-born Canadians, is going through full steam ahead. If you ever look at the numbers or look at the demographic of those being euthanized through the MAiD program, they're never the immigrants. Never. There are no Somalians or Indians or Chinese that are going through these programs. They are literally euthanizing the white Canadian born, their families are from Canada, the native Canadians. They're euthanizing them on purpose. That is the globalist agenda. The Zionist agenda was more so keeping us enslaved. The globalists are now destroying the Zionists. They're the ones taking over, but they want to kill us. And when you think about slavery or death, I'll be honest, bondage doesn't sound too bad after when you make that comparison. So that's why we're seeing this increase in euthanasia in Canada, because the Canadians have been now taken over by the globalists. And the push is happening here in the United States. There's only a few areas that are holdouts, but for the most part, they're getting their ways. It doesn't seem like even the U.S. will be necessarily inhabitable long term for even Americans if in the next 10 years. I only say that because Trump's only going to be president for the next 3. That's our greatest layer of protection that we have. Anyone that comes after Trump, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to have the strength or the capability to resist. Then where does that leave us? The reason I said we have to go to other countries is because a lot of this push for the globalists requires an extensive electrical infrastructure for a lot of their agenda. There are less developed countries where the globalists don't have a foothold because they're not developed enough. So that's why I'm saying we would have to pretty much go back to living like the Amish, horse and carriages one day to escape slavery, whether it's digital, whether it's different forms that is going to come in the future. It's happening now. Our neighbors to the north have been enslaved and they're being slaughtered like sheep one by one. So that's why even our president is sounding the alarm about this. We're going to let Glenn Beck talk for a second, and then we're going to go to my co-host and we're going to bring him in and we're going to go over this a little bit more.
Keep the ones who are actually working hard and making all the money. They keep all of the care there because that's what's good for society. Okay. Well, this is exactly what's happening in Canada, and they're just not saying it. I mean, they can't keep up with the system of care that they have up there. People are dying all the time. And so what they're trying to do is just reduce the surplus population.
You know, I'm a big fan of Jimmy Dore, but I'd love to hear what he thinks about this. You know, he's one of the people that is a proponent of universal health care. Nothing is free in this world. Everything comes with a cost. And when you're thinking you're going to get free health care, what you're going to get is free death because it's too expensive for the government to supplement and take care of everybody. There are people that are literally obese who gorge themselves on purpose every single day. And you want me to pay my tax dollars into a system that keep those people alive or to give them medical treatment when they're literally trying to kill themselves with food. There are people that purposely go out and abuse alcohol. One of my really good friends here in Arizona, his neighbor just drank himself to death. And I mean, he was showing me pictures of his neighbor over the last few months. And I'm like, is this guy is he constantly sunburnt? Why is his face bright red, but he's a white guy? And it's because he's flushed, and you can tell that his body's shutting down. No one cared to stop him. And DoorDash was in GoPo. They were just delivering liquor to his house every day until one day he didn't wake up. Am I supposed to spend my tax dollars to pay for treatment of people who do that to themselves? It doesn't work. When you're doing that, you're going to run out of money. And the next suggestion to help you meet your budget is the same thing that all communists do. See, when you're thinking about free food, free housing, free healthcare, that's communism. What do they have to do in communist countries? Well, ask Mao, ask the Soviets. Communism only works on a reduced population size. It's not nothing that it doesn't work when you have large numbers. They have to kill people. When you ever hear those stories about the communists in China and Russia, 100 years ago, they killed 20, 30, 40 million people. Why? Because in communists, you have to pay for all those people because the government and the state own all means of production. It's not individual. It's not capitalism. So the same thing's happening in Canada. So I would wonder, where does Jimmy Dore stand? Because, well, for free healthcare to be offered to you, they have to also offer you death because, well, your free healthcare is straining the system. The numbers are not going to make sense for you being a senior citizen to still be alive. They're going to want you to just volunteer to die at the age of 60. There was a movie about that too. I believe it was with Justin Timberlake, In Time or something like that. You get to a certain age and then they euthanize you. Or it was the movie The Island, one or the other. That's what's happening to Canada. It's like all these things are happening. They're all coming true. And that's what you get when you want free stuff. There are people in the United States that hate the American government, but they won't leave. And all they're begging for is communism so they don't have to pay bills and they don't have to work. The problem is people who don't want to work or pay bills, you have to euthanize them. Once communism becomes the law of the land, then euthanasia becomes a normal practice. Right now, it's only available in about 7 states out of 50, but it's available in the entire country of Canada, and it's being utilized, and people and the organs of those people are being sold to us here in the States. He's going to get to that in a second.
And so now you can go in and get euthanasia for, pain. You can't conduct yourself with meaningful activities anymore. You can't.
And do me a favor, like the channel, subscribe to, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If this is a topic that interests you, I don't talk about all the regular stuff everybody talks about. I kind of go into some of the weeds that a lot of people want to stay out of. I do have thoughts and opinions on a lot of them. Some you might agree with, some you don't. I'll tell you, I'm not always going to win popularity contests. I speak a lot about COVID and the vaccine here, and I bring the research to the table. And a lot of people do not like my findings because my findings will include the people around you, but they also include my family as well. I know what's about to happen and what's already happening. So like I said, people don't want to hear that. So if you're interested in these types of conversations, please subscribe to the channel. And I appreciate you guys being here.
Perform your daily activities. You have depression, autism. All kinds of stuff.
Really, any reason.
Any reason.
It's at least expanding to that eventual.
It just expanded. There was 2 people that were just cleared for euthanasia because they got kicked out of their home because their home was being given to illegals. Okay, so these Canadian citizens, they get kicked out of the home. They can't find a place to live. And they're getting depressed about it. They go to the doctor and the doctor's like, well, we don't have any beds for you. It'll be months before we can see you. You can't give me any kind of help on this. No.
Gosh, they should have illegally crossed into this country. We've been happy to help them.
I know. Well, no, they're Canadians. If they're Canadian, then they're probably white and we can't help them.
Oh, gosh, I hate white people.
I know, me too.
Yeah, let's be honest. There are no help if you're white. There's no sympathy for you. It's just becoming the law of the land because everyone sees white people in general as just being the enemy of everything. So they want to see bad things happen to them, and they will not. They're not going. No one's going to assist them or feel sorry for them. So that's why I was saying the people that are being euthanized are white people. They are not offering this program to the illegals or to the migrants. They're not doing it. And there's a stark pattern. And I guess, they're going to have their justifications, but you and I know what's going on. So, and I discuss it here on this channel a lot. So, we don't really have to beat a dead horse. No pun intended. Right now, he was just explaining how 2 people were basically depressed because they were going to be homeless because they were living in state-sponsored housing, communist housing. The state owned it, but they were being evicted because they wanted to give those properties to non-white newcomers to Canada, migrants, illegals. So because they were being kicked out of their housing, both of these people were depressed. And the way they treat depression in Canada is not with expensive medication because that costs money. But what they do is they will offer you medical assistance in dying suicide, which is MAiDs. When I say MAiDs, that's what it stands for. Like the cleaning lady, medical assistance in dying suicide. So that's what they're offering people just for being depressed. I remember there was a woman who had just went through a breakup with the man who decided that he didn't want to have kids with her. So they broke up. They euthanized her because she was depressed about a breakup. What I mean is that they're going to look for any excuse because like Glenn just said, life doesn't mean anything to them. But in our opinion, life is precious. But that's how it is. When you're a conservative or you're a traditionalist or you're a Christian or you're a Trump supporter, these people want to make you think that you're the worst. How? I'm trying to save life. The people that are on the opposite side that are not Trump supporters, they want to see you dead. They want to see you end life. So we're going in completely different directions. That's why I said we're not going to both be able to coexist and occupy the same space. Again, that's why I tell people if you're on the left, you're better off migrating north to Canada. And there you can live in your communist utopia until it's time to put you to sleep. That's where you should go. This country, America, the United States, we're not going to make this a widespread policy, but it is creeping in, which is the issue.
So they convinced 2 of these people just to kill themselves.
How?
Because
so
of the
awful. But this is a long stand. You want to make a slippery slope argument. This is a really easy place to make.
And it's happened over and over again.
Yeah, this is the same way it starts every time. It's always every time. You look at that. What was the movie? $1 Million Baby, I believe it was. If I'm remembering right, it was Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that was a really fascinating movie to watch as someone in our position, if you're a conservative, because she, spoiler alerts throughout, she was a female boxer. This is a long time since I've recounted the story, so I apologize if I get it wrong. But she has a terrible injury in the ring and is put on basically like life support and kind of wants to die. And he unplugs her at the end, if I remember right, basically. And she dies. And it's like, it's the best possible case in a way for euthanasia. You feel terrible for her. She had all this to live for. This awful thing happened to her. She was incredibly unhappy. And, you felt like he was doing the right thing. The movie presented it in a way that it felt like.
Yeah, in my opinion, the movie also presented it in a way that you think life's supposed to always be happy. That's not life. Everyone's not going to always be happy. Life is more so, in my opinion, at least it is for men, is more so about duty. Death is easy. As men, we don't have any responsibilities when we die. There's no rent, there's no mortgage, there's no kids, there's no wife. You're dead, it's over. You don't have any of those other problems, things that weigh you down. But you have a duty to those around you. You have a duty to your family. You have a duty to your friends. And to pull yourself out of society prematurely by suiciding yourself, it's not fair to anyone. Life's not necessarily always about being happy. So that's why that's the point the movie was making. And it seems like a lot of other directors are trying to pretend like that's what a big issue is with a lot of people. They think life's supposed to always be about happiness and comfort, and it's not. Iron sharpens iron. You have to go through tough times. You have to go through some lows. There has to be some downs for you to appreciate the ups. If it was always dark outside, if it was always sunny outside, would you appreciate, a beautiful day? No, it has to get dark for you to appreciate when the sun comes up. So and that's how I feel about when I see these different movies trying to pretend that death is the answer, when really they're just using reverse psychology to convince you that you should kill yourself, kill your kids, go out there and get yourself into a situation like these protesters. All these different things are literally trying to get us to kill ourselves. I tell people we're at war. We're at war with people who are weaker than us. So what they're going to do is they're going to use our own media apparatus and propaganda, and they're going to convince us to kill ourselves. Because everyone knows, because Americans individually were very big and strong, the only other person on earth that can deal with an American would be another American. Because no other country, everybody else is too afraid to fight us. They've convinced us now to fight each other, which is a problem. Let's not make it easier for them. At the end of the day, they just want to see more dead Americans. They don't care what side it's on. But that's all a part of this whole World Economic Forum depopulation agenda. All of this just leads to less people. Don't believe me? How many millions have died in the Ukraine? They're literally sending these people. They want more war. More war equals more death. And because they can't get us to start a war over here on this continent, they're volunteering to euthanize you, which is a huge problem. Let's bring in my co-host for a second. Let's talk to Arthur. I want to see what he thinks about some of this. Hey, Arthur. So talk to us a little bit about Trump officials that are being alarmed about the horror of what's happening in Canada. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll brief you and the audience. A senior US health official, Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill, expressed deep concerns about Canada's medical assistance in dying program. He highlighted ethical conflicts where end-of-life care intersects with organ donation. Since Canada's euthanasia legalization in 2016, organ donation after euthanasia has grown significantly, even crossing borders to the US, raising ethical questions about potential conflicts of interest in balancing life preservation and organ procurement.
Really? So why is that being allowed to happen, and isn't selling organs illegal? What are the legal ramifications of this? How is this happening?
So, to clarify, selling organs is absolutely illegal, but organ donation itself is regulated. In Canada, euthanasia is legal, and some consenting patients, before death, agree to donate organs. Legally, it's framed as voluntary consent, and Canadian law allows organ donation after MAiD. But it's controversial. Critics say it risks incentivizing euthanasia, while supporters argue it respects patient autonomy. The legal framework hinges on documented consent before death.
Interesting. So where do you see a lot of this going? And is this because of why are they doing this, in your opinion, from what you can tell?
Well, supporters would say it's about respecting patient choice. Some terminally ill people see it as a final act of altruism, choosing to help others live after they die. But critics worry that if organ demand grows, subtle pressures might arise, especially on vulnerable patients. So where it goes depends on how strictly ethical safeguards are maintained.
Okay, let's go into some of the talking points, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's start with the first key point, and as we agreed, I'll provide a counter perspective after your take.
Sure.
Ready when you are.
No, I'm ready.
Perfect. Let's dive in. What's your first take or point on this? And I'll bring the counter right after you've laid it out.
Well, go ahead. No, what's your first point you want to ask me about?
All right, first point. Given that Canada's MAiD organ donations have helped save lives in transplant patients, do you think that benefit outweighs the ethical risks?
I don't, because I believe all life is precious. And from what I've been reading lately, they're even euthanizing people who are just going through depression. Now, as we all know, the sun is not going to always shine forever. Again, there are going to be highs and lows. That's called life. If you're going through a temporary low, for them to kill you when you're just going through a temporary point of depression in your life, I don't think that it's fair. And I think that maybe there's a propaganda going on to convince you to be in despair or depressed, just so that you'll seek euthanasia as an option for the pain that you're dealing with. And I don't think that's right. What do you think about that?
The counter view is that Canadian law requires thorough screening. Patients must have grievous, irremediable conditions, not just temporary lows. Advocates argue it's about patient autonomy, allowing individuals in intolerable suffering to choose their end. And if they willingly want their organs to help others, that's respecting their agency.
But what about but what about I don't see depression as being a disease that's in permanent pain. How do you justify euthanizing someone through the MAiD program who's just simply depressed? That's a depression is a temporary low.
I hear you. The counter argument would be that even in cases of illness, the legal threshold is stringent. The system aims to ensure that all treatment options have been explored and that suffering is truly intolerable and lasting. But your point stands. There's an ongoing debate on whether mental health suffering should ever qualify. It's a question of where that line should be drawn.
I'll be honest with you. In the United States, when they start pushing MAiDs in the states that it's available in, when they start advertising it, I bet you they're going to use someone who's black and someone who's famous and someone who's a woman. I bet you they're going to pull out Kamala Harris, Oprah Winfrey, and Gayle King, and they're going to be the first ones to promote MAiDs to the American population. That's my prediction. Because think about it. Who promoted the vaccine harder than Kamala Harris? She promoted it more than Fauci. And she was able to convince people that would have normally said no. But because it was her, and she's a black woman, or she's a fake black woman cosplaying as a black person with her Greek letters, people trusted her who normally would have never trusted the system. So I think, and then you're not allowed to criticize people because they're black. That's not allowed in America, apparently. So I think that's my prediction. I think once this becomes mainstream in the United States, they're going to use some black women to promote it. And you're going to start seeing people that are going to volunteer to be depressed. I mean, if you can be euthanized for just being depressed from being homeless, what do you think is going to happen to the homeless population, Arthur?
That's a bold prediction, and I hear your concerns about messaging. The counterpoint would be that MAiD has strict criteria and is unlikely to be promoted like a consumer product. In nations with MAiD, the focus is on terminal illness and thorough consent, but you raise a key debate. Where's the line between autonomy and vulnerability? I think society will have to grapple with that tension.
I mean, I say mental. I've been saying depression. You're saying mental illness. Are you? I mean, I don't think they're both one and the same. I see mental illness as being something that is long term, but I see depression as being something that's short term. What do you? I mean, what do you think? Is there a distinction between that in Canada?
Yes, there's a serious distinction. In Canada's law, mental illness must be persistent, diagnosed, and deemed irremediable. Depression alone, especially if it's situational, is not sufficient. But the debate is whether these lines blur in practice. Your distinction is valid. Depression is often short-term, while recognized mental illnesses have to meet a higher bar.
Let me ask you a question. How far are we away from diagnosing people who believe in racism with mental illness? Because in my opinion, that's a really bad mental illness to think that everyone everywhere you go hates you because of the color of your skin, and that there's people that are tormenting you because you're a certain race, and that makes you believe in this kind of racism, even if especially when it's not there, it's all mental. How far away from us being able to diagnose racism as a mental illness?
Racism isn't classified as a mental illness. It's generally understood as a social, cultural, or ideological belief, not a clinical disorder. Diagnoses require criteria grounded in medical and psychological research. While bias can be influenced by experiences or environments, labeling it as mental illness isn't a realistic path. The focus remains on education and social change, not medical diagnosis.
I don't know. I've met a lot of people who believe in racism, and they were heavily indoctrinated and suffered from extreme delusion and mental illness. And it lasted longer than depression. So if you can euthanize somebody for being depressed, then you should definitely be able to euthanize people for believing in racism.
That's certainly a strong opinion, but the key distinction is that medical frameworks don't equate harmful beliefs or biases with clinical illnesses. Euthanasia laws focus on irremediable suffering, often physical or extreme psychological conditions. There's no pathway to classify belief systems in that realm. The conversation is better aimed at education and societal discourse than medicalization.
I think you might want to say it hasn't been proven yet, but I think that's something that's on the horizon that will come, and that means they'll have another way to go after their own target demographic with this type of treatment. Because there's certain people, let's be honest, that they've been trying to kill off since the 60s. There are certain people that they've had a hard time. They couldn't do it with AIDS. They couldn't do it with the retrovirus drugs. They had a huge success with the COVID vaccine, but they're going to need something else to finish off the rest. I think MAiD's being introduced, and certain celebrities with really nice tans promoting it. I think that'll be the next wave of how to get rid of certain people in the United States by getting them to just kill themselves. Okay, but I'll concede to you on that argument. What's the next talking point, Arthur?
Understood. You've laid out your view. Now, next talking point. Should organ donation after euthanasia be allowed to cross international borders, like from Canada to the US? Or does that raise a new ethical layer?
Personally, I don't think it should be able to, but I mean, then again, I mean, the people are already dead. So what are you going to do? It'll be a waste of organs to not send them to the United States, especially if we need them here. But I don't know. Those people in Canada, what was the vaccination rate for the Canadians so far since the pandemic? Can you look up that stat?
I don't have a current vaccination rate for Canada specifically in 2026. Historically, though, by 2022, over 81% of the eligible population had received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. If you need precise data beyond that, it wasn't available in this search.
I'll be honest with you, that says enough. One sure way to kill somebody is giving them an organ transplant of where the host with the organ was someone who took the vaccine. That's them spreading death to people around the world. I know this because I knew someone who had just recently had an organ transplant and they were against taking the vaccine. But right before he was having the surgery, they tested his blood to make sure that it was still a match. And they said that his blood was different. And he a few months before he was in a dialysis and they did a blood transfusion, but they did a blood transfusion of vaccinated blood. So when he had the organ transplant, he was fine for 3 days, and then all of a sudden he just went into a shock, the same type of shock that we're seeing these vaccinated people go into, and when they start shaking and they fall out, and he passed away immediately, like a few days after having the organ transplant. So when you're installing these organs or you're doing these blood transfusions of people who are vaxxed, it sends your body into a shock. Your body is not going to, a lot of people's bodies are going to reject this, whatever was in those injections. So I wouldn't want any organs from Canada coming into the United States. That's just spreading the death that we're already dealing with in numbers so bad that in California, they're recording a decrease in population, but it's not related to the people moving out of the state. That's indicative to people that are passing away and they don't want to sound the alarms. So I don't think any organs should be taken from Canada anymore. Okay, what's your next talking point, Arthur?
Got it. You've made your stance clear on organ sources. The next point, if Canada continues to expand MAiD, what oversight or international ethics agreements do you think should be in place, if any, to avoid these ethical dilemmas?
I'll be honest with you. When you're offering somebody death, and when you can, no matter what you offered people, with the right salesman, you can get them to buy it. If they are having doctors who are trusted or whatever with credentials, if they're offering you death, then you might start to believe that it's actually a good idea. I don't think it should even be offered. I don't think, because it can be sold. Selling death to people when God gave us the precious gift of life, no matter what condition we're in, is wrong. And it goes against the moral framework this country was built on. So I disagree with it altogether. Give me 1 second. Purple, by the way, says, Alabama John said he wants to talk to you right now. He is also live on Rumble. Come by when you can. Okay, I don't mind joining that discussion. How do I join Alabama John? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to join somebody else's live on Rumble. I'm kind of doing my own episode right now, but I mean, I'm going to actually look into that once this episode ends. But Purple, by the way, if you send me the information, I'll definitely come over, and I'm always available to have conversations. So I'd appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for the heads up. Okay, Arthur, what's the next talking point?
Absolutely. And we'll wrap this point up. The next talking point is about patient autonomy. Some argue that giving people agency over their end-of-life decisions is the ultimate respect for individual freedom. What's your response to the argument that bodily autonomy should include this choice?
I heavily disagree. Basically, I disagree because of the whole transgender movement. I don't think that you should be allowed to go see a doctor to cut off your private parts no more than you should be able to go, especially if it's not something that's medically necessary. But I don't believe that a doctor, I mean, what if you go to a doctor and you say, hey, I want you to cut my arm off, fully healthy, functioning arm, but I want you to remove it because I have a few friends that don't have arms and I want us all to be able to, go rowing together or join a one arm bike club or something. There are people out there who would volunteer to dismember themselves. I don't agree with that. I think that doctors ethically should have standards where they can say no. You can't humor every request because there is something called regret. And there's a lot of people that mind about stuff later. Laser tattoo removal is basically shows you that there are people who make decisions at one point in time in their life and they regret them later. So when you give people autonomy over their own bodies, yeah, it sounds good in practice, then that could be abused. Somebody can be in hypochondriac and they can say, "Oh, I want my kid to get a check every month. I heard the government gives you $2,500 a month if your child is disabled and they're missing a few fingers or an arm." Well, people take their children in and elect them to have body parts removed. If you can take your child in and have their genitals cut off at 8 or 9 years old, then you should be able to. You can really take them to get anything cut off. That's what I mean by the waters get muddy. So I'm just going to go to the extreme to the other way and just say it should all be blocked. What's your counterpoint, Arthur?
The counterpoint is that autonomy doesn't mean anything goes. In medical ethics, informed consent and professional standards act as guardrails. For MAiD or other procedures, the aim is to ensure people facing genuine, irreversible suffering have a compassionate choice. The guardrail is rigorous assessment, ensuring no rash or coerced decisions. But your stance highlights the importance of robust oversight in all such cases.
I don't know. We don't have such oversight. It doesn't exist. And then even if there was oversight, how do you argue with someone that you know better for them than they do? I just don't. Just the fact that people are even asking for this because it's available, it's a problem in itself. The argument becomes circular, and they're really you're really just helping people hurt themselves instead of helping people help themselves. That's my point. But what's the next talking point?
Understood. Your position is clear on the ethical risks. But the final point, if MAiD is here to stay, what alternative support systems like mental health or palliative care do you believe should be prioritized to reduce reliance on it?
I mean, the only options that I can think of is therapy, but it depends on who's your therapist. Is your therapist gay? Is your therapist a practicing liberal? It's just you're gonna need to know your political leanings of whoever you're speaking to, because then that's why you're gonna know which way they're gonna guide you. If you're you're in the United States, and you're going to a therapist and they're a Democrat leaning to the left, they're going to promote you doing things that are going to lead to your death. But if you're dealing with someone on the right who believes, like myself, that life is precious, we are going to help you. A therapist is going to try to get you to do certain things to mitigate the damage and the negativity so that you'll want to stay alive and feel like you have purpose. Who your therapist is and what they believe really could make a huge difference. Because right now we're in a war and there's so many people trying to convince you to kill yourselves. But I'm trying to keep you alive. I'm trying to convince you to stay alive. I've been having these arguments ever since 2020. I've had them with my best friends. A lot of people think I left Los Angeles because of the price. And I'm like, no, I left Los Angeles because they started doing vaccine mandates. And we started getting the shots way before everybody else. We started giving out the shots in 2020. By December, California actors and celebrities were getting it in December of 2020 when everything was still up. No one knew anything. So the death started happening all around me. I left California because of that. Again, I believe life is precious. And then to see so many people forfeit it. I mean, even I know this guy named Ray J. And even he is literally, the doctor told him he only have a certain amount of time to live due to vaccine injury. So I left because of the death. I'm trying to keep people alive. Other people want to kill you. People literally argued with me just so they can go out and take an experimental drug. And now all those people, if they did survive the first 5 heart attacks, they're getting organs removed now. They're sick. It's just a big thing. So I think that therapy is a really good option, but I don't know how you save people from themselves. Some people are just hell bent on self-harm. I don't know. What do you think about that, Arthur?
It's true that therapy outcomes vary and the practitioner matters. The counterpoint is strong standards and diverse options are crucial. Expanding palliative care, community support, and early intervention can help people find purpose. It's not about quick fixes, but ensuring genuine care pathways exist. In the end, a robust safety net might reduce the demand for extreme choices.
I mean, I would hope so. I really would hope so. Do me a favor, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video. It pushes us into the algorithm. This is an important topic because it's going to be more of a thing here in America soon. There are already certain states that are doing it. Matter of fact, Arthur, what states are right now currently offering medical assistance in dying? I think there's like 7 states. What states are offering it right now?
As of now, medical aid in dying is authorized in 12 US states plus Washington, D.C. These include California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington State, and others. Delaware also just joined in 2026, and Illinois will follow later this year. Several other states have introduced bills, but aren't yet authorized.
All of this is just death. Everything, all roads lead to death of Americans. Whether we're getting contaminated organs and blood from Canadians, to we're offering suicide to Americans, it all equals a net negative for the life for life in the United States. All roads lead to death, which is my problem. I make these videos and I come on here and I talk to people because I want you to stay alive. I'm gonna do the best I can to save as many as I can, but there's only so much I can do. Share my videos, help amplify my voice and my reach, and agree, and if you agree with the points, let me know. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and join this live on Rumble. If I get the details, I'll post it so you guys can come over and visit us on Rumble. But you can follow me on Rumble. It'll say, what is it? The Right Wing Rico on Rumble as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'll be back with another topic shortly. Remember, America first and America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.